Hey guys, welcome back to Release the Craftin. Priscilla here with a special episode of Craftin Campfire Tales. I have some spooky real stories sent in to me by you guys to tell you in this special. I'm very excited. I think you guys are going to enjoy them as well. I want to say thank you to everyone who sent me their stories and the people who have been watching and liking and doing all the things. This was a lot of fun to put together, and I am I'm just super tickled to like finally get to it. So here we are, and I wanted to say before I jumped in what I'm going to be doing, because I'm not going to be telling you guys what I'm doing for the rest of the video. I'm just going to be telling you guys some true tales of terror that have been sent to me of people's personal ghost stories and sort of spooky experiences, and I can't wait for that part. I want to tell you what I'm doing, okay, so that everybody is on the same page. So what I have is something that I can't really fit into frame appropriately, so this is going to be really interesting to film because it's a giant like dollhouse sort of thing that came from the thrift store. April found this at the thrift store for me, and I bought it from her. So she sent it to me, and I've been having it. I've been sitting on it for a very long time. It's not like an actual dollhouse. It's like meant to hold a candle that you can only put through this door. So that has led to some interesting thought processes in my brainstorming bits because I can't cover this door, because I can't put the candle in, because there's literally no way to access it on any other side. And like I said, this thing is big, so I don't know how I'm going to film this in its totality for you. I'll try to do like a endgame photo video something when it's all set up so you can see it like in its full glory and mastery. But I love this thing. First of all, I love it because somebody took the time to paint this, and as I was like looking at this, you can see like the pencil lines where they sketched out this like brickwork, which I kind of think I want to keep. I want to add like this brick texture to the final product as like an homage to the original thing. But the painting is painting, and it's really cute, but it's very rough, and I'm a little bit sad to cover up somebody else's artwork with my own, but they sent it to the thrift store, so I think they've outgrown it. They've let it go. I also broke this corner. I have the pieces to that still. I'm going to try to fix that. If I can't fix it, I'm not going to stress it. I tripped over the thing because I left it on the floor of my closet and I broke it. But I'm going to try to fix it, or at least make it less dangerous, because it is very pokey. Very pokey. And then on this side, there are some more window openings. So you can see my little thrift store thing. It's almost up to my camera, so that's how big it is. But yeah, there's some stuff I want to do. I want to fix this roof bit, do those sort of things. Oh, I almost lost a piece. I have the piece for the corner here. I'm going to paint this up, do some things, make it nifty, and figure that out. I have a couple of challenges because I can't, like I said, cover up this door, even though everything in me is like, make the door close. I can't. I have to leave it open, otherwise I'll never be able to get in here for anything. Also, I can cover up these windows, and I have an idea for how I want to kind of do that, because I want it to be spooky. We're going to make a spooky house, of course, because it's Halloween, and that's the idea. But I can't cover up all the windows, so I have to leave these ones like open, or at least vented, because the air has to come in for the candles to work. I do have a set of like LED lights, like here, which I might also use when I don't feel like using candles. I don't know if you can see. You won't be able to see because it's so big, but it does light up the inside of this pretty nicely, but it doesn't reach the top here. So that also presents like an obstacle, because I have to figure out a way to get the lights to go all the way up to the top levels, which I might do by trying to stick them to the inside of the window, but I only have like this much workable space because this doesn't come apart. It's entirely together. And then, much to my chagrin, this hole in the attic does not lead anywhere. There's like the top of the house goes here, so it blocks off any access to this. So I can't get any light in here because it's like a little tiny like 1-inch space. Also, my finger doesn't fit. So I don't know what to do about that part. I have to figure that out. I have a couple of ideas. I have a couple of things I want to do. I have a limited amount of time. So what I'm going to do is jump off here, start telling you guys some scary stories, and start working on this. And then we're going to come back at the end to check out the final product and do our final thoughts. So yeah, that's what we're doing. Happy spooky season. Happy Halloween. Happy Samhain. Whatever you celebrate. I hope it is the spookiest that you're willing to accept. And I hope that you guys have a great time. I hope you enjoy this story. So, awkward transition out. Okay, guys, so I hope that you are ready for the spookiest evening of viewer-submitted stories, because all these stories came from you. Minus the one at the end, that one came from me. So the last story I'm going to tell is my spookiest story, so you want to hang in to the end for that one. But yeah, the rest of these all came from you guys, so thank you to everyone who sent me in their story. If I missed your story and you sent it to me, leave a comment down below where you sent it so I can collect it up for next year. And if you were unable to hit the deadline for story submissions this year, don't worry, you can send me your story to my email and I will save it for next year's version of these fantastical terrifying tales of terror. So we're gonna jump into it because I have a lot of stories to tell and I don't think I have that much time. Well, actually I have all the time I want. I'm the master of my universe, but I don't want this to be 7 hours long. So we're gonna jump right into it with a spooky story sent to us by frequent commenter Amethyst. So Amethyst, thank you. I really appreciate you. I appreciate all of your comments, and I really appreciate you sending me this story. So here we go. Oh, before I forget, I do want to add, I am recording like I usually do whenever I have something important to record in the middle of a thunderstorm. So if you hear noises in the background, that's what that is. Also, as I usually do when it storms, and I don't really have to need to like explore this concept any further than this sentence, I am also having a glass of wine. So as I read this, my reaction to these stories might get goofier, so I apologize in advance, but I'm not gonna stop drinking my wine. I'm gonna relax and enjoy some spooky stories, and I think you should too. So make sure you get a couple of snacks, a couple of drinks, and join me here for this story. Like I said, this one's from Amethyst, and I'm actually gonna start it right now. So it was approaching Samhain, and I wanted to use that time to try and do some spirit work. I hadn't done it before and wanted to give it a go. I got a spirit incense recipe from Magical Crafting and went to the cemetery where my uncle is buried. He died in a car accident when I was about 18 months old. He was 28. I don't remember much about him, but he doted on me apparently. He was the oldest of my mom's siblings. So I took some flowers, I asked if I could take some dirt, and I didn't feel anything to suggest I couldn't, so all good. Went home, cleaned the dirt up, baked it, etc., and made the incense in my spooky room, and everything all fine and nothing untoward. Samhain rolls around, and I get myself ready for some spirit work. I wanted to connect with my uncle, my granddad, his dad, and my nan, his mom, but I knew that she probably wouldn't come through. She never liked a fuss and wouldn't necessarily come to the forefront of anything, so I set up my spooky room, and I run myself a bath to have a bit of a meditation before I start my working. Candles, etc., and some meditation music. I'm in the bathroom, obviously, which in the 8 years we have lived here, I have never locked the door of. There's no point, I just don't do it. The door is closed, and at one point I hear what I think is my husband come upstairs. Our stairs are ridiculously creaky, so you can't come up subtly. I get the bath ready to start my workings, and the door is locked. Like, actually locked. I can't open the door. I didn't lock the door. It can't be locked accidentally. I unlock it and call downstairs and ask if my husband locked it when he came up. I don't even know if you could lock it from the outside, and why would you? He said no, and he hasn't been upstairs. I felt no kind of malice, and I didn't feel trapped when I knew it was locked, almost like it had been locked to give me some private time to get mentally ready, not to lock me in. I then do my spirit workings. The windows and doors were closed in my spooky room. The room was warm, the central heating was on when I started. As I called for my family members, the room turned to ice, or at least I did, and the room felt kind of heavy. It felt that way the whole time, despite my working with a cauldron right in front of my face with the incense. I asked some questions. I felt like my uncle and my granddad was there, but I didn't really know what I was doing, so I wrapped it up fairly quickly. As soon as I said they could leave, I warmed straight back up again, and everything just felt lighter again. I never felt threatened during any of this, but I definitely did not feel alone. I think I achieved what I set out to do, and had I been more in tune with that side of myself, I'd have more answers. Nothing has happened since, but I do plan on doing some more work like that this Samhain, so we shall see. So feel free to use this story. Thank you, Amethyst. I totally did. And I actually love that. It's sort of a really like nice little story about sensing the presence of spirits in a way that was not threatening, but still a little bit spooky. Also, I do think they were trying to give you some privacy in that bathroom, so like shout out to them for that. Alright, so up next we have some spooky like snippets. I'm going to say some spooky snippets from Amy. So Amy writes in a couple of these little tiny vignettes of spookiness, and I love them. I think they're really good. Just listen. Here we go. When I was a young teen, I was in my bedroom after school, talking on the phone with a friend. I was all alone in the house, and my bedroom door was shut, like it always was. Out of nowhere, the door opened and slammed shut. I remember freaking out, telling my friend I was scared and excited. When I was 10, I think, my grandpa on my dad's side passed away. Sometime after the funeral, I was sitting in the living room with my family, and to me only, all sound kind of drowned out. The air got heavy, and the chandelier moved. I got this feeling and knew it was my grandpa. Then suddenly, everything came back to normal, and no one else seemed to have noticed a thing. Back in the day, when I was a practicing pagan, I was out in the desert with my friends and we had performed a ritual. I don't remember what it was for, and the atmosphere had changed. We all got some weird, creepy vibes. We all felt a presence, and then our protection candle was blown out and we felt this force come at us. We got the hell out of there, and whatever it was definitely chased us away. I had several experiences with that group. And the last one. I was asleep and something woke me up. When I opened my eyes, I couldn't move, but was able to scream at the very tall, large, all-black figure at the edge of our bed. My husband came running in, and I had to reassure me that I was safe. I had a few more paralyzing dreams, moments like that, too. So those are all very, very spooky, Amy, and I thank you so much for sharing those with us. She had a lot more little spooky snippets she could share, but these ones were the first ones she sent, so these are the ones I went with. And I love them. I think they're great. Alright, so the next story comes to us from Joy. And you know this one's going to be good because she sent it in an official typed up document with an attachment and a title. So it is called Demon in the Dark. And here we go. After I graduated from university, I got a job in an outlet mall selling shoes and accessories from a brand I really enjoyed at the time. They sold trendy, almost fairy tale-like clothes with beautiful, edgy accessories. It wasn't my dream job, but it was fun, and it was covering my bills while I worked out whether I could write for anyone without moving to London, which at the time I couldn't really afford. I've always been the makeover friend, the one who likes fashion and makeup and is a bit more outgoing than most, so it is delightful to me to help shyer, quieter girls feel beautiful and powerful. I did just that, and while I got on super well with our clientele, I didn't blend in as well with the other girls I was working with. It wasn't anything overt or mean, but it wasn't a wholly friendly vibe, especially from the store supervisor, who was older and seemed a little threatened in some way. This is why, when they all suddenly started talking about the break room and the basement being haunted, I thought they were messing with me. I wouldn't find this out until later, but the building that housed our shop was super old at the basement level, like ancient Britain and Roman city old. On top of that, it had been a hospital during World War II and has seen some of the worst Nazi bombing housings, men who had been seriously injured, many of whom unfortunately would die on the grounds. It also housed injured and dying POWs, so the building has some truly tragic history with many awful deaths. At the time, I knew none of this, and I attributed feeling cold most of the time to really strong air conditioning. The dodgy lights were flickering because of old wiring, and the anxiety attacks I was having, where one moment I was ordering coffee and the next I felt like I couldn't breathe, was because I was overworked, exhausted, and trying to figure out how to use my degree. In the big bad real world, the building being haunted as hell never crossed my mind as an option. Honestly, the weird lighting, the Arctic chill in the air, and the panic-inducing feelings of not being able to breathe were the least of what could happen to me in that job. It started one rainy Tuesday when I went down to the break room at the same time as one of the other girls. Let's call her Holly. Holly was the girl I got on best with. She had a fractious relationship with her parents, and she was younger than me in a way that made me feel a bit like a little sister. We sat in the tea room with our piping hot teas and our stuffed pastry filled with cheese, spiced potato, caramelized onion, and buttery flaky pastry. We started talking about the cover of a gossip magazine one of the girls had left on the table. We laughed and chatted for a bit, and then we both froze as we heard the sound of a lock being opened. Our break room is right down the hall from the staff lockers, and for anyone to be in there, they would have had to walk directly past us. We both knew that hadn't happened. I leaned out of the doorway to see one of the unused lockers open. I'm getting weirded out, but I think maybe this is an elaborate prank. The last thing I want in this already awkward social tier at work is to be the girl who believed a lame prank. Just as I'm reasoning my way out of being spooked, some of the other girls come down, and Holly brings up what just happened, and they all start talking about the ghost who dwells in our shop. They have nicknamed Bob. They tell me that stuff like this happens all the time, and not to worry, and they ask me if I believe in ghosts. I tell them I do, but only when I've actually seen it happen. An eerie silence falls, and the supervisor gives me this cold look and says, "You shouldn't have said that. Now you've made him mad." It was creepy as fuck. Most of the girls start saying that Bob hates it when people say anything like that, and I get the impression that people have quit over things Bob has done. I shrug it off. Look, guys, I do believe. I'm not doubting or being rude. I'm just saying I believe in my experiences, things I've seen with my eyes. They all look uncomfortable except for the supervisor, who promises me that things will happen now and I should be careful. That day, as I'm leaving work, I reached down into my locker for my purse, and in the second that my head went down, a waft of air brushed over the top of my head as the top locker, which had been open, slammed shut with so much force above me, it sounded like a gunshot. I was terrified. If I hadn't moved at that exact moment, I would have been seriously injured, if not decapitated. The manager and some of the other girls laughed when I told them what had happened. "See? I told you, you made him mad," she said with glee. I was really disgusted by their reactions. It's sort of like they were slowly turning on me, bar one or two of the girls. As the incidents ramped up, my colleagues went from people I didn't have a lot in common with to people who were slowly bullying me. The change was so unnatural now, I think they were low-key possessed by the evilest ghost I have ever encountered, and I began wondering if demons were real. For context, at this point, I had been a practicing witch for a decade. I did not scare easy, and I knew how to protect myself, having grown up in a family of women who see and interact with spirits. When I say that Bob was the worst thing I have ever come across, and I feared for my life at times, it's no light thing. I do not scare easy. As this demonic creature started trying to get me more and more, and I was having to go to work with salt and basil in my pockets, it seemed like every day that I resisted things got worse. The stockroom lights would pop off one by one, exactly like in a horror movie. Boxes would drop on you, large metal shelves would tip. If you had to go up the ladder, you could feel him pulling the bottom of the ladder, trying to haul you off as all the lights flickered like a strobe, and you were suspended 12 feet up on a rickety steel ladder alone where no one could hear you scream. So of course, they sent me alone to the stockroom every single time. I could feel his rage, especially when I was on the ladder and fighting back, invoking a circle of protection so I wasn't thrown down onto the concrete. Each time I could feel his rage build, and each time I came back up with the attitude of the other girls got worse towards me. Each time I barely held the ability to keep myself safe. I was miserable at this point, and I hated everyone I worked with. I knew I was going to quit, and the last time I went down to the basement sealed it for me. I had to use the ladder, and I could feel that awful energy breathing down my neck. The lights in the storeroom flickered as I climbed to the cold steel ladder, my hands sweating. As I turned my back on the basement, all the lights went out at once, and I could feel this demonic thing shaking the ladder hard enough that I almost fell over. These were strong, furious yanks that made the ladder move a foot across the concrete. I was scared for my life at this point, and I did what all the women in my family taught me to do. I will not give you my fear. I emptied my body and mind of everything but my happiest, sunniest memories. I rebuke you. You have no power over me. I called on my grandmother's spirit, a woman who in life had run her house as a matriarch in the midst of the most sexist of times. She was the only woman who ever scared my father, who went to jail for attempting to kill armed law enforcement. We nicknamed her the Dragon Lady for good reason. In that moment, I felt her. I smelled her cigarette, and I felt her go for that demon, and whoo boy did that dark thing run straight to hell to get away from her and the wrath of a grandmother protecting me. I don't fear the dark because I know there will always be a redhead who smokes like a siren watching over me. Witches don't fear darkness, we cast it out. Okay, so Joy, I absolutely love that story. It is so powerfully witchy, and I love that your grandmother was there to get that demon off your neck, because what the fuck? Also, fuck that manager. I can't stand her. She wasn't cool, so I'm glad that you're out of there. But what a cool story, you guys. I hope that you liked that one. Next up, I have a story from Rachelle. So Rachelle writes, this happened to my mom when she was a child, so about 1925. She was raised by her grandmother in southern Missouri, and they were dirt poor. They called each other mom and sis because, you know, hillbillies. They had moved from a little ramshackle house to a slightly bigger house that my mom's best friend had lived in before the friend died. It had a little fence around it with a squeaky gate, so you knew it were fancy. It was rumored that the heavyset woman had been rich while she was alive, which in those times probably meant she had about $10 altogether. So Midas rich. Anyway, the house was big enough that it had a cold root cellar under the house, which was accessed at the outside back. Mom used to keep all her preserves and other foods in this cold cellar, and she and Sis would make the trek to the back of the house and go down into the cellar every now and again. One time, they were both down there when they heard the gate squeak, a tread on the steps to the porch, the screen door open and slam, and footsteps on the floor above their heads. Sis, run up and see who it has come to visit us, Mom said. Sis went around to the front of the house, up the porch stairs, through the door, and searched all through the house. Nobody. Well, whoever it was probably thought no one was home and went off. Sis went back down to tell Mom, and they both just shrugged it off. The next time Mom and Sis were down to the cellar, they again heard the squeaking gate, tread up the steps, screen door, and footsteps above their heads. Again, Mom requested that Sis run up to see who was in the house. Nobody. Now, Mom and Sis did the shoulder shrugs, but did some head scratching too. The next time it happened, even Mom got her arthritic old self up from the cellar to see who the heck was roaming around their house. Nobody yet again. Finally, Mom figured out that the gate and all the rest were only heard when she was in one particular spot in the cellar, near a wall suitable for burying treasure in, maybe even as much as $10. Mom and Sis dug, they dug, and dug some more. They had practically dug a whole new cellar, but no treasure. Not even $10. So Rachelle, I love that story. It's so particularly wholesome, but also so spooky, because every time you go downstairs, you hear somebody walking around upstairs. I'm not about that life. But I love that one. This next story comes to us from Albert. So Albert writes in, so I'm telling you the story how I was told the story. I'm adding some details because it was a long time ago, but this story always stuck with me. My dad and I were on a camping trip in the San Antonio area. On our last day, we noticed the weather start to turn for the worst. Quick, so we started packing up camp. We parked some ways away from our truck. We had to move quick because it gets dark really quick. In the middle of packing, we hear thunder in the distance, but there is a high-pitched screech. My dad tells me to hurry up. Once we are heading back to the truck, I can hear behind me the screeching again, but it's louder, and also the sound of wings flapping also getting louder. My dad turns to me and says, "Do not whistle, just walk fast and don't look up." Getting to the truck, I throw everything in the bed of the truck and hop in. My dad gets in quickly and tells me to get on the floorboard and not to look up. Right then, I feel the front of the truck raise like something is pushing the back end down. I look out the back and see these giant glowing eyes. Under the eyes is a giant black beak, opening and letting out the same high-pitched screech I heard before, but deafening now. I throw my body onto the floorboards, closing my eyes and covering my ears, but I can feel that creature jump in the bed of the truck. I can feel all the talons tapping the metal as it walks closer to the cab of the truck, and my dad trying to get the truck to turn over with no luck yet. He stops and covers my body on the floorboard as we hear a crash from the top of the roof of the truck, more screeching, and now it sounds to be like nails on a chalkboard. One long scratch and then a long screech. I start to cry out and my dad tries to start the truck again. 2 long scratches on the rooftop and then nothing. The truck turns over and my dad floors it. Feeling the truck take off, I lift my head up looking out the window. I make out a shadow chasing the truck with fire in its eyes. When my dad speeds onto the main road, the shadow disappears. When it begins to lighten up, he starts to tell me what just happened. He tells me the legend of La Lechuza, the evil owl that craves the blood of men and carries kids off to hell, and the rest of the trip we rode in silence. And Albert, that's scary as shit. That's terrifying. I would cry. All right, so next up we have a story from Mandy. And Mandy writes, my grandfather died on Valentine's Day, a week after my 12th birthday. He had gifted me this fairy snow globe, and every night he turned my snow globe and let it play music as he wished me a good night. He died in the house a week later. My snow globe wouldn't wind up and play music again after that. Eventually, the glass on the snow globe also broke, but I kept it anyways. A few years later on Valentine's Day, I felt something in my room. The snow globe played a full song from across the room. When it stopped, I ran to it and tried to wind it up. It wouldn't turn. It wouldn't play. My grandfather wanted me to know he was there. And that's really short, but also very sweet. And I love that story, you guys. Next up, we have a story by P.N. Hinton. This one's spooky. One day, when I was much younger, we were all hanging at my grandmother's. The adults were in the living room talking as they do, and the kids were bored. Someone, not sure who, but probably my sister, suggested doing Bloody Mary. Since no one else had any other ideas of what to do, we all crammed into the bathroom to do the thing. Lights off, door closed, we all looked into the mirror and started chanting. Moments later, this green glowing thing appeared in the mirror. Apparently Disney got it right, and all evil things, including the entrance to hell, are green. Needless to say, we all screamed in terror and tried to get out. Unfortunately, the door was locked, and no one in their scared states thought to check since flight or fight doesn't always factor in logic. Meanwhile, all the adults who were chilling in the living room just heard their children screaming and freaked the hell out and ran to the bathroom. Someone finally unlocked the door, and when we explained what happened, well, let's just say our parents were none too happy that we took years off their lives by being dumb kids, and we were all punished. To this day, I don't mess with Bloody Mary or any iteration of it, looking at you, Candyman, because until the day I die, I will swear that something was about to burst through that mirror to get us. And that's scary as shit. I don't have anything else to add to that. That's just scary. If you guys have a Bloody Mary experience, leave that in the comments below, because I definitely do, and yeah, no. Not fun. Okay, so next up is another story from Rachelle. She sent in 2 stories, so I wanted to read them both because they were both equally good. So, here we go. My maternal great-grandmother, Rachel Christian, was born in a small Missouri town in 1859. She lived there the entire time, married, had 5 sons, and died there when she was 85 years old. She came to be known as a woman who carried on despite the hardships of life at that time, just like everyone else. Her 5 sons turned out to be more of a burden to her than a joy to her because they were carousers, drinkers, fighters, and generally ornery cusses who were famous for being mean all over the surrounding hills. Although most carried good biblical names, they never went to church, didn't marry a woman they hadn't gotten pregnant first, didn't spare the rod of any child they came across, lied rather than told the truth, and sexually abused their own children in many cases. But this story of Rachel came before her boys had cursed her life. Or maybe the thing this story is about cursed her. She was newly married to George Washington Martin and moved into his shack down by the creek. Of course, nobody had heat except the wood stove, no running water that they didn't carry in, and electricity wasn't even a glimmer in Edison's eye yet. In the midst of this, Rachel was expected to serve up 3 meals a day, hand-wash clothes and linens, tend a garden, iron clothes with an iron heated on the wood stove, mend, eventually have babies, and many other daily chores. The worst of these, as Rachel was concerned, was fetching the water from the creek. It was a good 2 miles up and then down a hill to get to the creek. Once George had dragged Rachel over the threshold of the new shack he built for her, Rachel's first task was to trek out for water. She took the huge wooden pail and trudged into the tick and chigger-infested grasses, not new to a task like that. As she walked along swinging the empty pail while she still could, she was determined to forge a trail to the trees that she could see in the distance. She knew the creek was in the midst of them, but she had to tread carefully to find the shortest route, all the while avoiding falling in the holes made by animals, looking out for snakes, shooing prairie chickens, and avoiding bison patties. It was on that first trip that Rachel thought she had found the shortest path. After a bit of backtracking to avoid the various perils, she finally got to the creek. But she had to scout around for the easiest point from which to gather the water, and so another trail had to be blazed when she trudged back. About halfway back, she came across a huge swath of very tall prairie grass. For a girl that was barely 5 feet tall, that grass was a little daunting, but to go around would have added more steps than a sweaty and insect-tormented Rachel wanted to take. So she barreled into the grass. Eventually, she came to a small and amazing clearing. What in God's name caused this particular little patch of dirt to be barren? Didn't matter, it stood in Rachel's way. She stepped on it and continued on her way. But suddenly, Rachel felt all her small hairs rise. She had goosebumps all over the back of her arms. It was far more than a sudden wind that had made the grasses sway. It wasn't a rabbit hopping by that made her feel she wasn't alone. Rachel knew someone or something was behind her. She'd faced cottonmouths and snapping turtles, but these were nothing compared to the sight before her when she turned around. Later, she was never able to accurately describe what she saw. Was it a haint? No. Was it a crazed bear? No. Was it some kind of demon? No. How do you describe smoke? Ugly smoke. Smoke that has a life, a putrid smell, and a moan. Oh God, a moan coming from a sudden mouse shape in the smoke. Coalescing inside the mouse shape was the sight of babies burning, a man eating his own entrails, wolves eating a woman alive, an apocalypse of torture, pain, and suffering. This and more was what made tears of terror come to Rachel's eyes. It's what made her urinate and scream and hold her hands up to deflect the horror. Torn from her mouth were the only words her mind could remember at that moment. In the name of Jesus Christ, take your evil away. I command you in the name of Jesus. Slowly the abomination dissolved back into the dead earth from which it sprang. Rachel ran all the way back to the shed, crying to Jesus to protect her. She had a death grip on the pail's handle, but there was not a drop of water left inside. She was white, shaking, crying, and shouting Jesus from her core. It was hours before she could be calmed down. The good part was that this was the hills of Missouri in the last quarter of the 19th century. Everyone believed her. A path was made for her down to the creek by the townsfolk, and the path skirted far away from the high grass. And you guys, that was really good. All these stories are really good, and I'm really loving this. I hope that you guys enjoyed that one. That was terrifying. I don't want to imagine it, so we're not going to. We're going to keep rolling right on through. But I do love that Rachelle had some, like, vintage horror stories to share. To share is what I meant. So thank you, Rachelle, for that. Next up, we have one from my buddy April. And April writes, one time I was sitting in my room with my legs crossed, and I was sitting in front of my mirror, and I was straightening my hair. I had the door to my room closed, and my room was covered with a pretty thick carpet, so no breeze could get underneath the door, and the window was closed. I'm sitting in my room doing my hair, and weird things began to happen. While I was combing through my hair, I looked up, and I could see that the curtain started to sway, so I sat really still to make sure that my eyes weren't seeing things. I even held my breath to make sure that from me sitting on the floor all the way up to the window, my breath wasn't moving the curtains. I sat there with my breath being held and not moving, staring intently at the curtains, and they were indeed swaying. So I looked back at my door to make sure it was closed and not cracked, and it was definitely closed. And I looked up my window to make sure it was closed, and it was definitely closed. And after a few seconds, the swing of the curtain stopped. I looked down at my feet, and they were purple. My toes were turning purple, and I don't know if this was just because I was sitting with my legs crossed, but they were really cold, and they were turning purple, so I'm like, am I hallucinating, or is something weird in here? I stretched out my legs and tried to give them a little shake to make sure that it wasn't cut circulation. I let them stretch out for a few minutes and then looked at my toes again, and they were still purple. So I stood up and went out of my room and just asked anybody else if their room was extremely cold. No one else in the house's room was as cold as mine, and that's something I will always remember, is how cold that room was compared to any of the rooms in the house. Eventually, my toes turned back to normal color later on in the evening after I warmed back up again. On another occasion, I was sitting on the floor looking through my CDs, and something underneath the bed grabbed at my lower back. I can just remember the feeling of it, and I obviously was extremely startled. So I looked under the bed to see if anything was there, and there wasn't. And when something like that happens, you sit there for a few seconds trying to replay it in your head to make sure that it's what you felt and what you thought happened. And I definitely felt something grab my back. Totally different than a fluctuating or reshifting shirt or anything like that. It was a grab. I believe that all of these weird things were happening because of a dresser that we had. I have no idea where we got the dresser. Maybe it was gifted to us, or maybe it was from the thrift store. Wherever it came from, I believe that it was haunted. All of the weird things started happening once we got this dresser. The room got really cold, the curtains swings, grabbing my back from underneath the bed, and then there's more. There would be times when I was sitting on the floor listening to my different CDs that I had. My radio player was one that had 5 spinning CDs, and so the CDs would rotate whenever they finished. I had my stereo system sitting on top of said dresser. I remember there were a few occasions when weird things would happen, like the time I was just mentioning where I was sitting on the floor one time and the CD tray shot open, just completely out of nowhere. So I looked to make sure that I didn't have the remote, and of course I did not, so I got back up to close the CD player so the music resumed. A few minutes later, I was startled again because the volume on the radio started turning up by itself. It was getting louder and louder and louder, and nobody was in the room except for me. No one was even near the radio, so there was no reason for it to be raised in volume. That one really freaked me out. It was also a regular occurrence that weird sounds would come from the dresser all times of the day. It would crack, but not like small settling cracks. They were loud cracks. There were also times when we would hear bumps coming from the dresser. My sister shared the room with me at the time, so she heard it too. I remember one night I was cleaning out paperwork and I could hear scratching coming from the dresser. So I went to go get my mom, and she came into the room to help me figure out where the scratching was coming from. We moved everything around in the room, and I took all the drawers and all of my clothes out of the dresser, and it was still scratching. I still to this day don't know where it was coming from or what it was. We no longer have this dresser, and I honestly don't even know what became of it, but I hope whoever has it now isn't experiencing all the things that I did, because I promise from the bottom of my soul, that dresser was definitely haunted. And April, I believe that. I believe that 100%. What a spooky ass dresser. Okay, so last but not least is my own personal spookiest of spooky stories. So we're going to jump into it, you guys. I hope that you have enjoyed all the stories this evening. They are scary. And if you aren't watching in the evening and you're watching in the daytime, more power to you, because spookiness is spooky, and, you know, sometimes sunshine helps. So here we go. Back when I was a wee little witchling, I had a huge fear of the dark. I like to think most kids did, but for me, the issue wasn't that the lights were out. That wasn't inherently problematic. The issue was what existed in the dark. I always saw something blacker than black lurking in the darkest corners, and I would constantly battle between whether or not I wanted my nightlight on. You would think the nightlight would provide some modicum of comfort, but that dim bulb only made the shadows more obvious to me. I would inevitably settle on, and I'm dating myself horribly when I say this, turning the light off and clutching to my glowworm. All of this to say that I probably had a fear of the dark, but a deeper fear of shadows. I don't know anyone who didn't grow up seeing the man in black hat lurking in the dark corner, and he was a constant presence in those late night hours. I'm not going to say I didn't fear him, but he felt more like a strict parent compared to what else lurked in my room. The closet creep. And don't ask me why I named him that. Let's blame Scooby-Doo and move on. Part of the nightly ritual of my childhood was loudly demanding to my deaf mother that she check the closet and make sure that the door was shut before I would deign to lay my head back on the pillow. Every night, she would open the closet, turn the lights off, and look inside only to close it and shut off the light and reassure me that nothing was inside. And every night, I would be exasperated telling her she had to check with the lights on because it doesn't come out in the light. And she would remind me she couldn't see in the dark, and I would put my glowworm into a chokehold as I laid down to sleep. Then she would leave, and I would untuck myself and pull the blankets up to my nose and wait. I'd wait for what seemed like an eternity, fighting sleep, because as the shadow stretched and moved around the room inevitably, the closet door would open. Just a sliver. The barest crack, but large enough for a shadow to sneak through. And then I'd see it. a small but wide ball of shadow rising up in front of the washed out white of the closet door. I knew then I needed to throw my blanket over my head before it got to me. Even though some little voice in my head would compel me to keep watching as it slank closer to me, moving soundlessly but with a presence that felt immensely heavy, I never gave in and would begin to squeeze my glowworm from under the blanket, the soft warm light my only beacon of reassurance. From under the blankets, I would feel the closet creep climb onto my bed and settle its face over mine. I never knew what it looked like, but I knew it was the face because the most distinct feature of the creep was its rattling, wet, and putrid breath. It would hover over my face and breathe hotly with a deep hoarse wheeze that sounded a bit like wet machinery, and I could feel the heat of it on my face. Eventually, the blanket over my face would become damp with the moisture, and I would feel suffocated underneath it. Every thought I had would tell me I needed to pull the blanket down and take a breath of fresh air, but I would be rooted to the spot in fear, just squeezing my glowworm every time it faded out. Eventually, sleep would take me, and I'd wake in the morning, untouched and thankfully breathing easier above the covers, and I would check my blankets for the wet patch of breath or some evidence of the stench, but I could never find anything. The closet door would be closed, all evidence of the creep gone with the night. I'd run out and tell my mom about the closet creep, and she would tell me that it was all a dream, and that it was because I felt hot because I kept pulling the blanket over my head. And I knew she was wrong. The closet creep was real. So I decided to trick the creep. I knew it was afraid of light, so one day before bed, during the nightly checks, I made my mom put my glowworm in the closet. She looked at me as if I had asked her to sleep in there, but she eventually obliged. Don't ask me how the glowworm was supposed to work with no one to push the button. It's child logic. After she left, I waited as I always did, anxiously anticipating another visit from the creep, and fearing what would happen if it came and I didn't have my faithful light-up companion, but it never came. The door stayed shut, I fell asleep, and woke up whole and unmarred by the creep. I was never visited by the creep again, and I left my glowworm in that closet as a sacrifice to the dark until I got too old to be terrified of the shadows in my room. Although, I never fall asleep in a room with an open closet door to this day. And as a side note, I found out years later that I have a sleep paralysis and night terrors, so it's very possible that the closet creep is a sleep paralysis demon, but I think it's just as possible that the closet creep was a ghost and my glowworm became a very powerful protection charm. And that's gonna be all for me, you guys. That is the entirety of our Halloween spooktacular viewer-submitted Campfire Tales of Terror, whatever you want to call it. That's everything. And this was a super awesome experience. I really enjoyed this. I really loved sharing your guys' stories. And I might do like another call for another round of stories. Maybe not of this particular variety, but I'm sure that you guys have some fun, like magical, mystical, questionable things that have happened. And I want to know all about them. And I want to read all about them. I really enjoyed this, and I hope that you guys really enjoyed it with me. I hope that you were spooked. Let me know which story you thought was the creepiest. They were all really good. Some of them a little bit wholesome, some of them not so wholesome. But I really enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun sharing this. And a lot of fun putting this together. So thank you to everyone who submitted their story. And like I said, if I missed your story, send me a message. Let me know that I missed it and where you sent it so I can find it and save it for the next time I do a special like this, or the next year when we do another spooky episode next year. Because I know that you guys have more stories to tell. I know that I certainly do. And I'm looking forward to that. But I'm not going to say bye here because we're going to jump to the end of this video and see the final result of everything that we made. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. It was fun to do a craft that was not my usual for you guys on this channel. And like I said, this was just a very fun experience to put everything together. So, yeah, it is what it is. And I hope that you guys really enjoyed it because that was a lot of fun. So I'll catch you guys in a second. Okay, you guys, this is it. This is the final product, and look how amazing it looks. It looks so cool, all lit up, and unfortunately, I had to scrap my original, recording of this, because this is on a low table in my house, and as I sat down to like film this and try to keep the camera steady, my cats decided that it was that exact moment they were going to get the zoomies. So you're going to see Nico make an appearance twice in this video. But they also were singing the song of their people in the background. So by the end of it, it just devolved into like chaos. So we're going to do this. We're going to do this voiceover together. There's a little flash of Nico flying by. I should do it one more time. But I am absolutely in love with this little house and how it came out. There she goes again. And I'm just so like satisfied with it when it is like all finished and put together now. And that's kind of a rare occurrence for me. I usually want to go back and like touch more stuff and make more things and like continue to work on something because I'm not ever really satisfied with stuff. But with this, I was like, it is done. There is nothing else to add. It is perfect and complete and whole, and I love it. I also have way too many candles in there. Don't do this if you have anything similar, because it's a little wooden house, and it's not meant to have all that heat in there. But I did it for the video. But I actually really super love how it came out. I think it's so great. I don't know if I'm going to keep it because it's a little bit big for the space that I have, but I do love it, and I had so much fun making it. I had so much fun telling your guys' stories. I hope that you guys really enjoyed this. This was a really fun experience for me. I had a lot of fun putting this whole thing together, despite all the pressure that I put myself under to do it. But I really, really enjoyed it. I really had a good time, and I would love to make more stuff like this. I just have to be mindful in the future of like my space and the size of the object I'm using because I don't have the right setup for really big projects like this. But I wanted to give you guys like a little bit of a close-up here. I know this is not best. I'm not a filmmaker. You guys, I'm doing my best. And I don't have steady hands, so we're just going to go through this together. I wanted to show you guys the details. I really love like the texture of the roof. That same texture is on the house, but it really comes through on the roof with all those layers of like dry brushing. And I really love it. And this little like bird that I stuck in the little hole in the attic that I didn't know what to do with. I think this one came out really great. That little clay one that I was going to try to like fix with paint after the fact would not fit there. It had a big fat butt, so it wouldn't fit. But this came out really great. I love these little effects. I added some real crystals to this. So there's a carnelian and some Herkimer diamonds. That little broom is so freaking cute. And that was a gift to me from some friends. And I just like painted it up and added a little bit to it to make it fit. And it looks great up there. I'm really satisfied with how everything came out. The little skulls, the little crawling hand, like the leaves, the detail on the walls, like everything just came out really great. I figured out I could turn up my exposure here so you can see things better. Eventually I'm going to turn the light on, you guys. You're going to see the flash will be on and you'll be able to see everything in crystal clear detail. So trust me, stay with me for the process. See, I figured it out. And yeah, I just love this. I love our little like black thorny rose bush over here on the side. The gravestone elements came out really great, even though I freaking hate that clay with every like fiber of my being. I just like, yeah, this was really fun to make, and I would love to like pursue more projects like this. I really love the little spider webs in the windows and the little shelf mushrooms, like the little oyster mushrooms came out super cute on this. I wish I actually had made more of those. I would have liked to have carried that around all the way to the back of the house as well. But I wanted to just sort of focus on the parts that you would be able to see as you went. And then don't worry, I didn't forget the LED lights. I actually have them in there on the roof to light up the roof a little bit. And I think that's really cute. And here you can see some of the details up close. Even those little like mushrooms came out really great. Those little tiny ones, which I managed to salvage from the oven because for some reason they just incinerated, even though they were in the right temperature in the oven. And they came out all lumpy and craggly looking, but I decided to use them anyways because I think they fit the whole Halloween vibes. So it worked. Everything worked, and I am just super pleased with the process. Very happy that it's done, and just really happy to put this together for you guys. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, if you'd like to see it come back next year, let me know for sure. And that's going to be it for me, guys. Until next time, happy Halloween whenever you're watching this, because it's always spooky season, and I'll catch you then. Happy crafting. Bye. Also, I appreciate your faces.